What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. If you are watching on YouTube, you might notice I am not at my usual spot, and I have on a collared shirt. Something special must be going on. I am joined by Taylor King, the general manager of Morrison Yard. Taylor, where am I?
Brandon, you are at Morrison Yard Residences in downtown Charleston. We're a brand new luxury apartment community, and we're really trying to connect with all the locals here in Charleston and try to start a new community, build community. That's what we're all about.
I love it. We are in the Sky Club, correct?
That's right.
Awesome. So we're not here simply because you're trying to get me to move in, because I do have a home, for the record. But we've been working with Trey Hill, good friend of mine, been on the show before, for these community events here. And it came up, I do a podcast related to sports. You are a former competitive gymnast. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the only sports I think I haven't talked about. So I was like, you got to come on and talk about gymnastics. First things first, how did you start in competitive gymnastics?
Sure. So I was a really wild, crazy kid who was kind of jumping off the walls. Honestly, probably had some form of ADD, but my parents were like, we got to do something with this kid. I was super hyperactive. So at the age of 3, they enrolled me in little gymnastics classes, and it just kind of took off from there. I think by the time I was 5 or 6 years old, they were trying to put me on a competitive team already. And my mom had not had that intent at all. She was just trying to get me involved in something that would kind of drain my energy. So it kind of snowballed from there.
Wow. So if you could speak for her, your mom, what is it like? Okay, you got a 5-year-old and they're like, it's time to act like a professional now. We want her to be on this competitive team. What is she thinking when they come to her with that?
I think she was a little nervous. Again, that wasn't her intent, right? When she signed me up for the classes. And so they're like, hey, we want her to join the team, but involved with that is not just, oh, come and let her be on the team. You have to pay to be on the team. So there's a monthly fee that you're paying. You're paying for these competitions. I tell everybody I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, but I'm from a really small town suburb of Louisville, Kentucky. So we lived about 35, 40 minutes away from the gym where I was going to take these classes. So in my mom and my dad's eyes, the thought of driving out there that often, I don't know if they were ready for it, but I'm the firstborn. And okay. I've got a little sister, and they were like, okay, well, let's just kind of see where this goes. Even then, I don't think they realized where it was going to go, but...
So what do those practices look like? Because I've worked youth recreational sports with 5-year-olds. I see what gymnasts do. I cannot imagine. I have a hard enough time trying to keep them on a soccer field. So I can't imagine what it would look like with all of the gymnastics things that there are.
Right. So, I think a lot of parents enroll their children at a young age in something like gymnastics, male or female, just get out there, kind of run out your energy, right? Not all kids at that age are at a level where they're invited to kind of join a team, right? So I was one of the youngest kids. And I later coached gymnastics and coached little kids. And it is just like that. It's just like on the soccer field. Like, no, go here. No, go there. It's kind of chaos, right? But I think that I got such special attention from those coaches that I felt really important. And I felt like I needed to be, I guess, a little bit more mature, maybe just a little bit more serious about the sport.
Gotcha.
My parents made a really big deal about it when they asked me. And I think that was mostly internally because they were like, what is this? What are we going to do? Oh my gosh, we didn't see this kind of coming. But they made such a big deal about it that I was like, okay, this must be pretty important. And so when you're on a gymnastics team, or at least when I started, while I was, that age, the girls on the team were in between my age all the way up to 16 to 18 years old. So you're part of that team, and everybody is a different level, but the team as a whole is training and exercising and conditioning together. So that in itself gave me a little something to look up to, and kind of just watch. And I don't know another way to say it other than get in formation, right?
Yep.
So it was kind of like, okay, this is what the big girls are doing. This is what we're going to do. I think that everything kind of came so naturally to me that I didn't really understand at first the control that you needed to have, but that came soon thereafter.
So you say everything came naturally. It was kind of like a shock to your parents that you're doing this thing. When did you realize, oh, you know what, I'm really good at this?
That's a really great question. I think the first time that I realized was probably by the time I got to fourth grade.
Okay.
And I remember I'm from a small town. So my small town newspaper did a story about me. By this time in fourth grade, I had made it to level 4 gymnastics, and I won gold in all around in the state tournament. And so my small town newspaper wanted to do a story about me. And my mom was a school teacher, and they came to the school that I went to, even though I did gymnastics 40 minutes away in another town. There was a balance beam in that gym. And so they took pictures of me in my uniform leotard with my medals. And I was on the front page of the newspaper because, again, it's a really small town.
Tell you nothing.
But that's when I was like, wow, okay, I feel special. I feel like I must be really good at this. I'm getting attention from the newspaper. And then after that, once the story kind of came out, and then my teachers and other people, again, small town, are, oh my gosh, Taylor, we saw you. And everybody was just kind of pumping me up, pumping my head up. And I think that's the first time that I really realized, like, I might have a gift.
And just to be clear, you mentioned level 4. Where does that fall in, like, okay, the gymnasts we see on TV in the Olympics, what's level 4 mean?
Sure. So gymnastics goes from all the way up to level 10. Once you're a level 8 or above, you're considered to be an elite gymnast. So if you are, if you're really good, it doesn't matter if you're, still in high school or not. But sometimes you can be a level 10 and then still exceed that. These gymnasts that we see in the Olympics, these gymnasts that we're seeing right now in worlds, finals and everything, they're way beyond a level 10. So I started competing at a level 3, and I did that for a while. But again, I didn't understand the control that I needed to have. So by the time I reached level 4, I think I was a level 4 for one season, because then it clicked with me what I needed to do, and I quickly jumped up.
That's so funny that you're saying that, because about how you learned you needed the control and this, that, and the other, because we're talking about a fourth grader, right? And so to have that knowledge and awareness, that feels like something that might be unique to gymnastics, simply because of, like, your gymnastics prime is considerably younger than more mainstream sports, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, I'm not familiar with personally playing too many other sports to know what to relate it to, but it's kind of like, so I would go out and I would do a leap on the balance beam. And a leap is where you kind of jump out and one leg in front of the other straight, and the leg is out behind you and it's straight. And I would just leap. And they would say, no, you're leaping and your legs are going everywhere. It needs to look like this. It needs to look like, and I couldn't understand. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm doing that. Then kind of seeing it in the mirror and seeing what they wanted me to do. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, I've got to stop it at this point and kind of come back down. So understanding that control, and I guess maybe even with football, perhaps, just in the way that you might throw the ball and knowing when to stop your shoulder from going, and having that control and knowing where to, maybe even the same with basketball, perhaps. But you're right. At such a young age, you just don't really get it. But it took a lot of that practice. My coaches tried for a long time. I still didn't get it. But it was just getting that practice in, and having several different coaches, I think, try to show me that made me learn.
What would a typical practice look like for you?
Yeah. So, by that time, by fourth grade and level 4, I was practicing 6 days a week. I went to practice Monday through Friday from 4 to 8, and on Saturdays from 9 to 1.
So this was like a full-time job.
But imagine what it was like for my parents.
Yeah,
They worked
must
a
love you.
full-time job, and then they drove me 40 minutes after school every single day. I ate a lot of McDonald's.
Wow.
I did a lot of homework in the car, but I was dedicated, and my parents saw me thriving in something, and they really helped to support that, and to, not really to push me. They never really pushed me to do it. It was just like, if you're happy doing this, then we're going to do this. We want you to find something that you love. But practice was 4 hours a day. We would get to practice, kind of warm up for about 30 minutes. We practiced each event throughout, the 4 hours. And then, sometimes if it was competition season and you needed a little bit more work on a particular event, you'd spend a little bit more time on that. But the last hour of every single practice was spent strictly conditioning. So we would condition kind of like working out, right? But just not in a typical gym with weights and ropes and things like that. We would do plyometrics across the floor. We would use the balance beam to hold your body up in a certain way. We use the bar a lot. We had a rope that we would climb the pit, over the pit, just stuff like that. And so it just really made you very strong, created this core strength. When I got into middle school, I got a new coach, and that coach decided that dance was very, very important. And there's a ballet aspect to a lot of the routines that you do on the balance beam and the floor in gymnastics. And so to kind of fine tune those skills, she made us do ballet twice a week as well. And so we had to come in an hour earlier for practice just to do an hour of ballet before we would get into gymnastics practice.
With the rope climbing and the ability to dance and do ballet, I'm quickly understanding why I was not a gymnast. So one of my earliest sports memories was the '96 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. I remember watching Carrie Strug with the hurt ankle. She landed it. It was a huge thing, won the gold medal. And so every Summer Olympics since then, I've been a diehard gymnastics fan for that 2-week period. What was it like for you, someone who is a gymnast, to live through that? Because it made an impression on me. And again, I'm not climbing any ropes or doing any ballet.
Yeah. It was so impactful. I would have to say in my career, the '96 Olympics was the most impactful national event, I think, that for me, that made such a difference for gymnastics. I was the biggest fan of Dominique Dawes. She was closer to my age. She was the youngest one on the team at the time. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, I am going to be her. I'm going to do that. Like, I know she's young. I can do that. If I work hard enough, I can get out there and I can do that. And it had been the first time in a long time that a U.S. gymnastics team had done so well at the Olympics. So it brought all this national attention. Like you just said, it did for you. And here I am, already a gymnast, already obsessed with it. I'm from this small town where I'd been in the paper. And so everybody kind of already knows that I'm doing gymnastics, but this just made it amplify so much more. And it was kind of like, oh, are you going to go to the Olympics, Taylor? What is this like for you? The newspaper interviewed me again and asked me what my Olympic dreams were. And I remember my mom's got it saved in a scrapbook. But where I said that Dominique Dawes was my favorite gymnast and I was going to be just like her. So it was really, really impactful. The gym that I was a member of really, I guess now looking back, really saw it as a marketing opportunity, I suppose, and a way to make some extra money. And so they'd get out there. We would do these exhibitions at the state fair or at the mall or all these places where we'd get out and we'd get on the trampoline, or we would do these tumbling passes, or we would show off our gymnastic skills to try to recruit new gymnasts to come to the gym. Kind of what we're still seeing now, with Simone Biles, and she's the ultimate GOAT, right? But just the Olympics that she was a part of Olympics ago. And it was just like nobody had ever seen anything like that. And then all of a sudden you had all these little girls starting in the sport. So it was kind of like that in 96. And I think it really picked back up when we were introduced to Simone Biles. But yeah, we would do a lot of fun things like that. I remember the Olympics specifically, and that for me is when I was like, okay, now I'm going to get even more serious than I've ever been. I was fully dedicated to it after that moment. I had already been, but it was different because I then had Olympic dreams. And that's what I was going to do.
I think it's something I take for granted playing basketball, where every season you were going to get to see your favorite player, Michael Jordan, was going to be on TV. And so I take that for granted because I had people all the time who I'd be like, I'm going to be like Mike.
Mm-hmm.
But then for someone who does a sport like gymnastics or track and field, where you only really get to see your heroes once every 4 years,
Right.
I bet that was nuts.
That's right. Yeah. And, even then they weren't really showing even college gymnastics on TV. And you didn't see gymnastics. Well, I mean, we've got so many more networks and TV stations now than we did. But that was exactly right. It was every 4 years. And so, the 92 Olympics, I think I was just a little too young to really remember. So then 96 rolls around, and that was the first one I really paid attention to. And so that's when I formed my first heroes in gymnastics for that very reason. You didn't see them otherwise.
And you talked about, I want to get back to your career in a second. You talked about Simone Biles. So let's go back to her real quick.
She's amazing.
She just became the most decorated gymnast in the history of everything that's ever existed. And then one thing I've learned about sports as I've gotten older is if you want to feel even older, you watch sports, because they're saying what she's doing at her age is incredible. Like, she shouldn't even be alive. Like, what's going on? Like, they talk about her as though she is on death's door. She's 26 years old.
That's right.
So you have this sport that you're doing, and you're very familiar with what the athletic prime is for a gymnast. How incredible is it for her to still be at this level at 26?
That's a really interesting question, because based on what I knew growing up and what most people will say, 26, she's almost aged out. I see it a little bit differently now. Now that I'm older myself, right? I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get old. I'm always going to be active. I'm always going to play sports. But I get out there on the soccer field and I pull a hamstring instantly, right? Because I am older. I think when you push yourself and you really train and you're dedicated like that, you can go a little bit longer. There's just really no limit to what Simone Biles can do. I think she's got the ultimate... she's got a good head on her shoulders, right? So, like last Olympics, when she was a little stressed out, she was going through this anxiety and the pressure that was put upon her. I can't even imagine what that was like. But she took care of herself. She took some time off. She came back and said, no, I'm still going to be great at this. I'm sure it wasn't easy for her just to get back in the gym and immediately be landing all of those skills that she once was, able to do. She still had to work hard to get back to where she is right now. Typically for a gymnast, your career is over by 23, 24. There are a few gymnasts who have made it a little past that. I believe it was a Russian gymnast, might have been a Ukrainian gymnast, and she competed in like 7 or 8 Olympics.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about, because she just kept showing up.
Up to the age of like 48 years old.
Yes.
And that was her last Olympics. And no, she didn't win gold. But look at what she was doing. It's not just like you're the best gymnast in your country. You're also Olympic level. That's incredible. But I remember always kind of looking up to her too, because of this whole age where you're supposed to not be in gymnastics anymore, where your body just doesn't do it. But I think you got to have that self-control. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be disciplined, and you have to continue to train consistently and not let the rest of life kind of take over. Oh, I'm 26 years old. Well, I want to maybe see what this is like. Might want to go party, or, we're brunching on Sundays. No, we're not doing that. We're focused. We're training.
So back to you then, I guess is a great question to ask. How much did you feel that tug of like, hey, I want to go be a kid versus we got to go train 4 hours, 6 days a week?
I never felt it until I made it to high school. And my freshman year of high school, it was football season. And all of my friends, I think it was homecoming, and all of my friends were like, oh, we're going to help make like the homecoming float, and we'd decorate the hallway. And there was the homecoming game followed by a homecoming dance. And I didn't get to do any of that. And that was the first time. Middle school, I think I don't know. I don't remember my middle school doing anything cool like that, or like having any sports or clubs, to be a part of. But freshman year, that's when I first realized. So I remember after the homecoming game, which was a Friday, but I had practice. And then my practice was until 8 o'clock. We're driving back home. It's almost 9 o'clock. The dance was in full swing, right? So I didn't get to go to that either. And I just remember feeling so sad about that. And I said to my mom, I want to do that. Like, Mom, I don't want to miss out on that stuff. And like I said, my parents never pushed me. And they were like, well, you should talk to your coach about that. So I went to my coach and I was like, I think I might want to just take a break. I might want to take 2 weeks off. My coach told me that I was going to lose all of my skills. She told me that if I took 2 weeks off, I would lose everything, that I was going to get fat. She literally told me that in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
By the way, I'm 14 years old. But basically scared me. She said a lot of things, but scared me into, if I take a break, I can never come back to it. So I didn't. And I missed out on a lot of those times because I was so dedicated in gymnastics. Now, I left the sport. I did end up taking a break at the end of my junior year. Okay. So I got to experience some high school things my senior year, but I couldn't stay out of the gym. I went right back to it. It was just kind of a small break. And then I wanted to get back in there. And I did want to go to college, and I did not want to necessarily train so much in college. So I kind of just stopped competing and flipped over to the coaching side of things.
And how were you before this point, even before you wanted to take this 2-week break? What was your gymnastics career looking like? Were you still winning competitions? Were you still progressing?
Yeah. So when I made it to level 4, I only did that for maybe one season. I think I was a level 5 for maybe a few competitions before they bumped me up to level 6. So I think I even skipped level 7. I did level 6 for a year, and then I jumped up to level 8. And when you become that elite gymnast, all the other levels, you've got a routine on each event that every gymnast that is at that level is doing the same routine, right? So you've just got to be the best one who can do it. When you become an elite gymnast and you're level 8, 9, 10 or above, you are curating your own routines, I guess, on each event, right? And the skill sets have a different value to them. So leave vault out of it, right? It's like, here's the vault you can do, and this is the highest point value you can get. But floor, bars, beam, it's like, okay, if you do this skill, it holds a value of this. But if you do this skill, it holds a value of this. So it helps to, you could have the highest score you could get might be an 8.9, but then you might be able to build a routine where the highest score that you could get is a 10. So then you're kind of basing it off of that, right? So it was kind of just a different world, but it was neat because I got to focus on certain skills that I knew I was better at than others. Like on the balance beam, I had ultimate control and could do this thing called a Stalder press handstand. And I had one of the most impressive mounts to the balance beam because nobody else could really do that. I wasn't super skilled in the flipping necessarily. I was just afraid of it.
You and me both.
Yeah, to do, too much else on that balance beam. But that in itself was such a difficult skill that it would help to build up that value for me. And that was interesting because then it wasn't like I just need to be better than everyone else is doing the same thing as me. You kind of had to really find yourself and what you would be the best at. So I stayed in level 8 for probably 2 years before I jumped up to level 9 once I was able to get some of those skills down.
And so that's like right on the cusp of Olympic level?
Yep.
Did you compete against anyone who went on to the Olympics, or where you got a chance to kind of see how you stacked up?
Yeah, no, not anybody who made it to the Olympics, but I did make it to competing as a level 10. There were just a few girls in town that were also a level 10, and that was really something special, because when you would go to a meet and there was any level 10 gymnast competing, when it came time for them to do their routine, the entire gym got quiet. The entire gym watched. In fact, I can't really remember, but it felt like nobody else did any other routines. Everybody watched that level 10 gymnast, you know? So no, I didn't get to compete against anybody who made it to Olympic level, but I competed against a few people who did make it to college gymnastics. And actually all of those people I did gymnastics with, I'm still very close with. Think about it. You're spending so much time of your day every day with them. They become family as well.
That's awesome, especially since you're competing, you're all going for something. Like, if you're going for the Olympics, there's very limited spots for that, and you're able to put that aside and still be friends and family and hang out and everything. And you mentioned this coach, so it seems even less believable that 2 weeks off, all of this training would just disappear. But that's the other thing that I know about gymnastics is you hear all these horror stories about the coaches and how they push the athletes and all of this stuff. Was this incident that happened with this coach, was this something that was new, or looking back, are you like, okay, there were several instances where this was a little bit too much?
No, that was the first time that I had a kind of a bad coach. My coaches had always been very, very supportive. Of course, I had never told them I wanted a break prior to this, but this period of time, this coach came from another gym, and she had only been there for a little while as my coach. And I remember her saying that to me, and I think it was really oh, you're going to get fat if you take 2 weeks off. And I just remember being so infuriated. Like, how dare you say that to me? You don't know anything about me. Like, I mean, you do, but it's 2 weeks. Like, let me be a kid. Like, I'm missing out on all of this stuff. I couldn't understand why she didn't understand. And while I completely disagree with the way that she handled that, it scared me to not, take the break. However, while she was kind of the bad coach, I still had other good coaches around me on that team. Later, by the time I decided to leave the sport, it was because I had another bad coach. And this coach was abusive, verbally, mentally, never physically, but, kind of would make comments about your body and would make definitely played favorites, would tell you things, would kind of beat you down. And not just me. She did this to everybody. And it did not help me. It made me start to resent the sport. Everybody handles feedback differently, and some people can have a really tough coach and it can push them to great success. But I'd never had a coach like that, before this time. So maybe I got that bad coach a little too late. And I had the gall to kind of stand up for myself. But yeah, that was the next bad coach that I had. And I just remember going home and telling my mom the things that they would say. And, by this time, I'm in high school. So you're already, as any high schooler, I'm sure, but speaking specifically as a female, right? And you're coming into your body and you're coming into knowing yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, everybody's judging you. You got to be a certain way. Again, this is like the 90s. So it was kind of like that like drug chic, super skinny kind of vibe that was like supermodel, and so you're already so hard on yourself, and you're already like, am I good enough? And then you've got a coach, an adult coach who's supposed to lead you, who's telling you, no, you're not good enough. You're really not. You need to be better. That was really hard. I didn't have that at home. Again, my parents were very supportive. I was the apple of their eye. So was my sister. They did a great job in that, making us both feel so special and important. And it was just very different. And I know that it made my parents so angry, but they still turned to me and said, what do you want to do? And I was like, no, I can handle it. You know, I can make it, until it was just came to be too much. And I was like, I definitely want to just see what it's like to be a normal kid.
What was that decision like, where it's almost out of your hands to stop because it's no longer mentally healthy for you to be in this environment? So the sport that you've dedicated all this time to, you've loved, you have all this passion for, you can't do it anymore.
That's right. When I told my parents, their immediate response was, whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy. And if you want to go back, you can go back, but we just want you to be happy. I think they could see something inside me that I couldn't see, which was how that coach was really weighing on me, and how you know, it was really affecting me. So when I made the decision to leave, it should have been great, right? I should have felt so liberated, but again, small town, perhaps. Students at school gave me the hardest time about it. And I remember other student athletes, one guy in particular, Jason Stella, and he was on the soccer team. Jason, looking at you. He had a conversation with me in Spanish class, and he was like, I can't believe you. That's the stupidest thing that you could do. Somebody of your talent, that doesn't come around very often. You need to get back in there. You never should have quit. Nobody has that skill set. What are you doing? Don't you realize the gift that you have? Get back in there. You should be here doing this. This isn't important. This is going to pass. And I was looking at him like, you don't know me. But yeah, so other people, even adults, kind of gave me a hard time. Maybe they weren't intentionally trying to give me a hard time, but still making a comment at all about it played into my anxiety. And I'm like, well, gosh, I don't feel like it's necessary for me to tell you I had an abusive coach, and that I was kind of burning out on it, and that I just really just wanted to attend a football game with my friends. I just wanted to go to a school dance for once, you know, like that's all I really wanted to do. It wasn't about like, forget this. I'm going to sit on the couch and do nothing now. Like I was just trying to live a normal life. And I could have never expected what I heard from other classmates, peers, other adults in my community. And so, you know, we were talking about Simone Biles, right? And that last Olympics, this pressure that she felt, because she is the greatest of all time. And I think there was this pressure for her to outperform herself. Who else does she have to outperform? Nobody but herself. And that pressure, and she knows what's best for her. But you remember all the hate that she got from people? Like, what is she doing? Oh my gosh, she must have had this mental breakdown. It must have been this or that. And it's not. She's taking care of herself and her own body. And so though it be a much, much smaller scale, I felt where she was coming from in that moment. And it made me, I remember I cried. I cried because of the comments people were making about her own life, which people do when you're in the public spotlight. But they have zero idea of the work she's put in and the toll it takes on her body, physically, mentally. Nobody really has an idea, and they still have an opinion.
I think what was wild about that to me is that she's saying physically, mentally, she can't do it. And it doesn't seem like the type of sport where, okay, I play basketball, I'm not feeling it. I just go out there, and the worst thing that can happen is I look ridiculous. She could get hurt doing these things if she's not as sharp as she needs to be, especially if she's doing the higher difficulty
Your
things.
mental capacity has to be on. When you're on that balance beam and you're doing skills like any competitive gymnast, you realize it's a 4-inch wide balance beam. When you're on the bars, I mean, you can slip off of there. You've seen people do it. If you don't start off on the right foot, running down that runway to make it to the vault, you could slam your chest into the vault. There's so many ways for you to get hurt. So if your mental is not where it needs to be, it is incredibly dangerous. And that goes back to why I was so angry. People were judging her. They have no idea what that's like. They have no idea the mental state that you have to be in and the confidence that your mentality has to give you to know that you can get out there and to do it. And if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. Unfortunately for her, that came at the time of the Olympics in this national global spotlight for everyone in the world to have an opinion about. what she chose to do with her own body.
And you had lived through that.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew
Mm-hmm.
firsthand what that was like. And I can't imagine like just having to work through that, because you're right. You're in high school, which is just can be terrible.
Sure.
And we talk about it with other athletes who are professional and they're grown, and how hard it can be. So you're in, and you said you're in a small town too. How did that affect your decision? Were you able to, you clearly stuck with it, but did that affect like, okay, I'd hoped to do all these things now as a kid in high school. Now, do I really want to put myself out there like that and do that? Or were you able to just like, okay, I got to block it out?
No,
and
it
keep
was
going?
like that. I didn't know who to believe. I didn't know if I should believe the way I felt and the feelings that I had. I think that when you've got a coach, right, and my coach is saying these things, and I had already had a few years prior that negative experience where the coach was like, 2 weeks off and you're going to lose everything. So I'd already had that experience, and that's different when an adult coach is telling you this, and I'm like, no, I can't. This time I'm going to stick with it. Then your peers, right? The peers telling you that is what really got my attention. And I'm like, oh my gosh. In high school, there's no high school gymnastics team, at least where I'm from. You did traditional sports, football, soccer, basketball, cheerleading, volleyball, something like that, right? So even though I knew that I was talented at gymnastics, I just didn't think that anyone else in the school really kind of saw me that way. In fact, I kind of would be embarrassed at this point. When I was in the newspaper, it was like, please don't put me on there. Like, I don't want anybody to think that like I think I'm better than them, because I didn't volunteer to be in the paper. But I just didn't see myself as being, I guess, the same level of having the same level of respect in my sport as some of my other high school peers did in their high school athletics. So then hearing that from my peers about how disappointed they were that I had left the sport, and I'm like, what? That just really got my attention. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm making an impact. Everything I've done made an impact even on my peers, and everybody's really rooting for me in this small town. And I felt like I had started to let more people down. And so I still, because I'm very strong-willed, was like, well, I'm at least going to one football game. And so I did a couple of games before I eventually went back, because I felt like I had let people down. But, I think really I couldn't have done it without my parents. They're so spectacular, and just their unwavering support, and no matter what decision I wanted to make. And them saying, look, we just really want you to think about this, because we're going to support you in whatever you want to do. But you're almost out of high school. Then what? Have you looked into other gyms? Like, we want you to go to college. We think that's important. That's the one area that they did push me to. They felt college was very, very important. And I just wasn't sure where it was going to go. And I got back into the gym, and I just wasn't feeling it the same, competing the same. There are younger girls, and they're coming up, and they're going to outperform you. And that's all fine. But I just felt like I had missed out on so much, so many things. So I was like, okay, I love the gym. That's obvious. And I still want to come here and have fun. But maybe I'll try a different route. And so I started coaching. And so I drove myself at this point up there, and I coached gymnastics 3 to 4 days out of the week. That was my job, rather than working at, McDonald's or a clothing store, wherever people's first jobs are. That was my first job, was coaching. And I started with kids, and then I started coaching the younger level 3 and level 4 on the team, because of what I was able to do. And it was really cool, because I could still get out there and do things with them, that was really neat. And then I did start to judge competitions in college. I was a judge for some gymnastics competitions. When I got to college, I met 2 other gymnasts who I had competed against from other teams that were the same level as me. And then we ended up going to the same college together. I remember the first time that I ran into Jamie Fish. And Jamie Fish was also level 10, and she was so good. She was from our top competing gym. And I think I was I don't know, maybe like a football homecoming party or something like that. And I saw her across the room and I immediately was like starstruck almost. And I was like, you guys, that's Jamie Fish. And they were like, who is Jamie Fish? And so went up to say hey to her. And of course she remembered me from competition. And so she's the one that kind of got me into to judging. And so that was really interesting. And I have since even thought about trying to do that here in Charleston, but now work and being a mom.
It happens.
Took over.
About judging. So clearly I don't know the technical aspects of gymnastics, but even if I did, it seems impossible in real time to judge how someone is doing and assign a number to how that person is doing. What was the toughest part of that?
Yeah.
And am I crazy for thinking that, I guess is my question. Please validate me.
Okay, I get where you're coming from, but it's because you weren't a gymnast.
That's true.
That's it, right? So when you are a competing gymnast, you have to, okay, remember how I talked about the leap and I didn't have the control and I would just leap and I was very flexible and my legs might go like all the way up here. And they're like, no, they don't need to hyperextend. They need to stop here. That's the control. I learned that. I know that your toes have to be pointed. Your leg needs to come here on a certain skill. Your kip cast handstand on the bars. You need to come straight and have it completely straight. That means you push through your shoulders, you push up your toes, you're pointing towards the ceiling. If you are not completely straight and you're leaned over a little bit this way or that way, that's points deducted. That's not a perfect skill. So in doing that myself, that's how you know what to look out for. I will tell you, when I started judging, I would think back to a lot of the judges, the tough judges that I had. I'm like, were you ever a competitive gymnast? Did you ever do this? Who are you to judge me?
You don't know.
Like, I don't
Get
know.
out of here and do it yourself.
Yeah, I don't think you've ever done this before, but probably not. They probably had. But yeah, so you kind of know what to look for. I think it's easy to maybe miss a few things, but you've just got to like watch constantly. And, you know, I didn't judge elite level gymnast. So, you know, I was judging level like 4 and 3, 4, which every routine is the same. So you're kind of watching and it's a little bit easier to judge those types of things and to know your arm needs to be here. It doesn't need to be flopping over, you know. But I think that is all just because I had done it for so long. So I knew exactly what it needed to look like from a judge's perspective.
And when you were coaching, and now as a mom too, I'm sure you're involved in youth sports. Mm-hmm. How did the coaching you got, both the good and the bad, how has that affected how you coach and then what you're looking at when you're like, okay, you're in charge of my child. How are you going to act?
Yeah. You know, I think about that a lot. My son plays soccer, and I am thankful for all of his coaches. I have this uber competitive nature within me. So sometimes he has coaches that I'm like, get up and coach, like say something to him, you know, like you're sitting there on the sidelines, like letting these kids do whatever, like not yell at them, but like, you know, tell them like, hey, get over here, get back in position. You're playing defense, get back here. You are not a striker in this game. So I think about that a lot. But when I started coaching, my ultimate goal was to be a friend. The coaches that I had that made me feel so important and so special and that they genuinely cared about me, that is what resonated with me. That's what made me want to be better at the sport. Like I said, some people might be able to handle that really tough coaching and that tough feedback, and it might make them better. That has never in any aspect of my life been successful for me. So I really just wanted to give positive feedback, tell them what they were doing wrong, but then couple that with a, hey, but that dismount was nearly perfect. So here's where you can, you know, you can improve on this and that. And, you know, I picked up a lot of things from my coaches too. You don't talk back. If you talk back, you drop and you give me 25 push-ups. Or, you know, if you fall off the beam, well, you got 25 push-ups and things like that. But mostly just letting them know that I was a trusted friend. At the end of the day, I never, ever, ever wanted to be the scary coach. And I never wanted any of these kids to be discouraged from the sport because of something I may have said or done to them. And so that's how I went into it. I I even went into judging like that, but it's not like that because you don't get to talk to anybody, you know? I wanted to be like the judge that I had my favorite judges because they always gave me really good scores, but you still don't get to talk to them. So you don't have that feedback. You don't know what the gymnasts are thinking about you. But yeah, you know, my son is 12. He's playing soccer. He's had some really great coaches. He's had some not so great coaches. But all of them have just been really supportive and really encouraging and leading by example and fairness, and giving positive feedback along with the negative feedback. And I've really enjoyed seeing that. That's what I had when I was my son's age. You know, it didn't get to be a little bit later until people were pretty tough.
You keep going back to the negative feedback thing from the coaches, and I have experience with that as well. And I'm curious, just for you, your own inner critic, what was it like when you would have a bad performance or a bad practice? Were you super down on yourself?
Yeah, I was. I would get super down on myself. It would take my mom. My mom was typically the one that was taking me to practice and bringing me home, and my sister spent a lot of time with my dad. And it would take my mom a lot of time to pump my head back up, you know? Besides the late practices and eating a lot of McDonald's, that's probably why there was a lot of ice cream with McDonald's, because it was kind of like, hey, it's okay. You'll get back out there tomorrow. My mom would often say, I remember one competition in particular, and I did not perform very well. And I was so disappointed in myself. And that was it. I was disappointed in me. And my parents were like, we are so sorry. We should not have kept you up so late last night. I think we went to like eat some dinner, and then we went to like Walmart or something, but it was like 9 o'clock at night. And typically I was in bed by 9 o'clock at night. So I don't think we got home till 10 or 10:30. And they were like, we're so sorry. We kept you up so late. And that's what it was. Don't beat yourself up. It's our fault. You know, like, it's not yours. Like, it's okay. There's some good competitions and there's some bad competitions. And it's like, it's okay. It was us. But I think I was so hard on myself when I wouldn't perform. And I would get such bad anxiety that I think my parents were just like finding ways to make it better for me, even if they were the ones that were trying to take the heat, you know?
Yeah, kind of balance that out. Because I know I felt like I was always my own worst critic. So if I had someone also piling on negative feedback on top of that,
that's right.
I didn't need that.
And that's it. I am my own toughest critic. That was very, very hard on myself already. So I think that's why that negative feedback and those two really bad coaches that I had, the feedback that they would give and the way that they treated me, that didn't work for me. You know, I was already so hard on myself. I'm so eager to please. And at a certain point, if I can't please you, I'm kind of left wondering, what am I doing? You know, there's got to be some positive feedback given here. I'm working my butt off. And I think that's just, it got to the point where it's kind of like, okay, I give up. I can't win with you. I cannot make you happy. But again, there were other coaches who were not like that, you know, and I do sometimes, I think back to those two coaches and I think, well, they were just being tough on me to push me. I've had bosses like that in my career that have just push. Similar to gymnastics, it does not work well for me in my career either. I do not take that very well. It makes me kind of want to give up in a way. But yeah, you know, I think that their intent was to push and make me better. I just think it was a little too much, or really just the wrong route to take with me personally. Where sometimes you might have a coach that might try that and then they see, so they take an alternative approach to tailor their coaching to the athlete, right? These two coaches, in their instance, it just wasn't like that. They coached the same to everybody, except they had like a few favorites that were never treated like that.
That happens.
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about basically how, you know, gymnastics, that kind of coaching, and how having similar bosses doesn't work for you. How much overlap do you see between Taylor the person and Taylor the gymnast even today?
A lot of overlap. You know, I think when you are so highly competitive in a sport that's so demanding so much of my time, 6 days a week, you really have to learn a different skill set, and not just that of your sport. It is how to time manage yourself. It is how to, I had to be done with my homework before I made it into that gym. And like, we got out of school at like 3:15. So I was doing homework in the car the whole entire time. I was so hard on myself in gymnastics. Therefore, I was also hard on myself in school, and I demanded the best from myself. Leading into my career, it's a similar type of time management. I'm still very hard on myself. I'm still very highly competitive. That's when I perform at my greatest in my career, is when I'm being compared to someone or something else. It's like, oh no one's going to win but me. But I think there's a lot of overlap. I think the respect that you learn, the time management, the discipline that you have to have with yourself, and not just discipline as in like, oh, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Okay, I'll get over here and I'll do this. But it's like, you could feel sometimes you would do a skill and it wasn't perfect. And it's like, nope, I felt it wasn't. And you would try again and again and again and again, and just trying to get it right. And that has overlapped into my life now. I'm still a perfectionist in some ways, and it's really hard for me sometimes at work. I think my team would agree, to delegate some tasks, because I'm like, me, I can do it all. But I definitely think the discipline and the respect are the two most important skills that gymnastics taught me that I didn't realize at the time. I did not even realize how impactful it was. I think I may have mentioned to you once before, but we're in the South, right? So it's yes, ma'am, yes, sir. I didn't grow up like that. My parents never expected me to say yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. Now I expect that of my son because we're in the South. But I had a coach, Shane, and he thought that I was sassy. I was too sassy. And he was like, when I ask you to do something, your only response is yes, sir. And I was like, okay. And he would tell me to do something. I'd be like, yeah. And he was like, nope, that's it. You drop and give me 100 push-ups right now. And I quickly learned. And so I started referring to everybody, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And it was just this level of respect that he demanded as my coach. And he was a good one. He was a really good coach. But I saw, when I took that out of the gym into everyday life with other adults, the respect I received in return. And it was kind of like a real eye-opening moment. And that's just one example. But those types of things that you learn throughout the sport, as I'm sure you do any sport, but particularly for me, of course, gymnastics. And I carried those things with me, and starting to learn those things at such a young age. It's not like I had to reach the age of like 26, 27 and be like, oh, I get it. This is what I need to do. I've just always kind of been like that I think I learned, again, from the sport. So I think a lot of that carries over into my career and my day-to-day. I wake up and I get to the gym in the morning, and I get home and I go to my first job. This at Morrison Yard, this is my second job. My first job is being a mom. And it's all day long really, but you really get to the thick of it after job number 2 every day. And it doesn't matter the kind of day that I've had or how tired I am. You've got to perform. You got to be there, and you got to put on the show. And I think that I think all parents are mostly able to do that. But my job is pretty demanding as well. So keeping that positive attitude and then taking that positive attitude home with me are all things I've learned.
Just like leaving school and heading to the gym for practice.
That's it. That's exactly right.
So I want to give you a chance to talk about everything that's going on with the Night of the Arts and everything you're doing at Morrison Yard. But first, last gymnastics question. What are you most proud of your gymnastics career?
Wow, that's a really good question. Without spending too much time thinking, the first thing that came to mind was after the 96 Olympics and the U.S. women's team took home gold. They did a national tour, and they toured several different cities. And when they came to Louisville, they came to Indianapolis, Indiana, and I think they came to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I, along with 3 other girls, so a total of 4 of us from our gym, were asked to come, like, to perform with the Olympic gymnasts. So, they're individual events, I guess, right? But it was kind of like, okay, well, they're going to get out there and they're going to do their Olympic routine. But leading up to that, we can't just have Dominique Dawes on the beam doing her, her one thing. So you're going to get out there, and these are some of the best gymnasts from the area. And you guys get to get out there and get to, perform your best event, I guess, for the crowd. And I remember being very proud of that because I got to meet those gymnasts and I got to hang out with them 3 different times. But also just how proud it made my parents and everybody in town. And I really thrived on that, just feeling so special and so important. So even though I continued gymnastics for a long time after that, and I won a lot of competitions and I had a really great career, off the cuff, I'd say that that's one of the coolest things that come to mind because, like I said, that '96 gymnastics team, it was life-changing for me. It was the first Olympics I really paid attention to, and that's when I really became focused. So it was so impactful for me. It just really drove it home.
I probably would have retired right then.
Yeah, I'm done.
I had a friend in 3rd grade, Milton Bussey. Shout out Milton, Ashley River Creative Arts Elementary School. Hello, everybody, unicorns. Who got tickets for that showcase here at North Charleston Coliseum. And I went. Again, not a huge, you can't keep up. We can only keep up with gymnastics so much when you're however old you are and it's not on TV all the time. But still, I knew who these people were and I was hyped. And if they'd had me come out and do a somersault with them, that might have been it for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine. That'd be like, I guess, child me, like doing warm-up lines with the '96 Bulls or something.
Yeah. I've got all of their autographs with like their pictures. They all signed all their autographs. I still have them to this day. It's like it's like in a very, very special place, like where you keep like your baby blanket and stuff like that. It's like, this was my childhood. This was everything to me. So yeah, it was just one of the coolest things ever. I was so excited to get to be a part of it.
I agree, but you're doing something even cooler here. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So your friend, my good friend Trey, came to me with this concept. He has really become this beautiful poet and has met a lot of these creators in town, and he's very innovative. So he saw this opportunity to kind of provide a space to get a lot of creators together. And at first I kind of saw it as kind of like a meetup group, right? Or a club of sorts. Like, hey, we're all creators in town and we can kind of get together and meet and brainstorm and toss around some ideas and network and things like that. And then when we got to talking, and I think that's a really great idea, I'm like, well, I have this platform at Morrison Yard and we've got all these great amenity spaces and I'm hosting all of these events. I actually think it started, Trey messaged me and said, hey, do you ever do art events? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, like art, music, good vibes. And I was like, say more. And so we kind of started talking and the conversation went like, oh yeah, you're thinking this? Oh, well, I could do something. Oh, really? What if oh my gosh, then we could do, and it kind of we started getting really excited. So we are hosting a Night of the Arts here at Morrison Yard next month. I believe the date is the 14th of November. And we have a couple creators coming out. These are, I think for the most part, painters that are coming. And we are having an interactive Night of the Arts. So a lot of our residents, and of course, we encourage the public to come as well. We were kind of briefly talking about that today as well, to, kind of come out and introduce some of these local artists to people. Here at Morrison Yard. We have 380 apartments. So it's its own little city full of people. But when it comes to art of any kind, right? Music, visual artist, written word, it appeals some form of that to nearly everybody. So a way to kind of reach out in the community, find some other local creators, help them get their name out there, I just so happen to be gifted with this platform here and can help throw these types of events to kind of get the word out there. And I think our goal, I think this is Trey's goal, and I hope to help him with this, is to kind of snowball this and to make it a recurring type of thing, maybe eventually also leading up to that meetup group of sorts for local creators where they could have a networking event on their own here to kind of share ideas, share some events that they've had. Maybe they've got an upcoming show and they want to invite everybody to. Maybe they're working on crafting something and they think, gosh, I really need a musician for this. And then somebody can say, oh, well, we've worked with this person in the past. And I just personally am not super familiar with the arts in Charleston, maybe to some degree. So I'm not sure if there's anything like this that exists, but based on the people that I've met through Trey, I don't think that there is right now. So I see this as a really unique opportunity, a way for us to get these creators' names out there, a way for them to show off their work. And continue to build community. That's how we started.
Yep.
That's what we do here at Morrison Yard.
Yeah, I'm excited too. If there is something like this out there, then it can't hurt to have another thing out there as well. So I'm super excited. Is there anything else we need to know about it? I know I'm going to put all the information in the show notes as well, so people will know this is when we need to be there. This is the address. Anything else?
We will have food and drinks. I can tell you that. Hoping to have some live music. This is not just a typical like First Friday art walk, right? It's not a come and browse the art and potentially buy something. While we hope that you do buy something from these artists, it's a little bit more interactive. So you might walk in maybe with your dog, and then an artist can do a quick little sketch of you and your pet or something like that, so something to kind of give back to the people who come to see what these artists are bringing to the table. And also, lastly, this is just the start. So this is the inaugural event, but again, we hope to make this a recurring type of event, and it won't always be somebody painting you when you come in. Again, we want to bring in creators of all different kinds to this platform and give everybody something new and fresh to look forward to, rather than, for me here, your traditional resident event. Hey, we've got a food truck downstairs.
You got bingo.
Yeah, we got exactly. Just a more elevated experience where everybody is gaining something from it.
Yeah, and showcasing what Charleston has to offer.
That's right. Charleston's a beautiful place with so much to offer, and we have so much talent, and we're going to bring it to everybody here through these events.
Absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. I know so much more about gymnastics. Wait till next summer. I'm going to be yelling about it.
Oh, I can't wait to be texting you while it's going on. Like, did you see that?
We'll have showing, watch parties here.
That's exactly what we'll do.
So we'll do that. But I'll put all the information in the show notes. Like I said, this has been another episode of Beyond the Art with Brandon Silvers. Like, subscribe, rate, review, share. Come back, listen again. Come to the event as well. I will catch y'all next week.